Yes, indeed. I think we've hit the crypto bottom. And I know making bold predictions like that is kind of risky, but I have got some great rationale and some great data to back it up. I think if you look at where crypto came from in the last couple of months, crypto suffered one of the biggest liquidations we've ever seen. We had the Neuner ecosystem collapse, which was a $100 billion ecosystem, which caused a cascade of liquidations throughout the market. First, we saw the ecosystem itself liquidate, and that was about $100 billion. Then we saw all the lending and borrowing protocols who were actually exposed to the protocol start to liquidate. And then we saw the funds who were exposed to the lending protocols start to liquidate. And we had what I think can be called a black swan event in crypto. It was a mass liquidation event, the likes of which we've never seen before. The sheer number of retail investors that were liquidated and the sheer number of institutional investors that were liquidated can only liken this to a black swan event. Now, I want to just show you something on the chart. This is the Bitcoin weekly chart. And what I've done is I've taken the weekly chart since the beginning of time for Bitcoin. And what you can see is what I've done then is I've taken the 200-week moving average here. Now, the reason why I've used the 200-week moving average is it's the longest measure that we've got of Bitcoin's upward trend. And if you look at this, obviously the chart starts 200 weeks or later in Bitcoin's life, but you can see that Bitcoin hardly ever touches the 200-week moving average. And very, very, very rarely, in fact, once in 2015, once over COVID, and again now has Bitcoin broken under the 200-week moving average and broken that trend. Now, the interesting thing is that every time it's done that, it's rebounded and given investors huge returns. But the other interesting thing is that the times that it's gone under the 200-week moving average have been black swan events. So here's the first one. This is COVID. I think we can all agree that was a black swan event. Bitcoin broke below the 200-week moving average. It was a black swan event. It wasn't exactly in the trend for Bitcoin, and Bitcoin immediately recovered and went up. Now, again, this time after all the mass liquidations, and remember one thing, Luna had about $3 billion worth of Bitcoin that they liquidated in the market to try and defend the peg of the stablecoin. And they sold that down in the market, and that started causing all these liquidations over here. And we broke below the 200-week moving average for about 5 weeks. And now we're back above the 200-week moving average. And so when I look at all that data, and I put all that data together, I look at the fundamental data, the mass liquidations that we've seen in the industry, and then I take that and I overlay it over the technical data. I've got to say to myself that that was a real black swan anomalous event, and that now we're starting to get back to normality or to equilibrium. With that said, though, we are at the mercy of the macro environment. And for as long as the macro environment continues to perform, I think we'll be okay. So now let's quickly just shift our attention to where the macro environment is. We've seen a drop in inflation for the first time. We saw quite a significant drop in inflation. We saw 0.5%. The Fed is not meeting again until the end of September. Before they meet again in the end of September, we're going to get the September inflation data. If you look at all the inputs for the September inflation data, specifically, you look at the commodities, you look at the oils, you notice that those have all come down. So you can kind of assume that by the time the Fed meet again at the end of September, we will have a maybe lower inflation reading, probably somewhere between 8 and 8.5% inflation reading. And so right now, if you look at the probabilities are about 50-50, whether the Fed will increase by 50 basis points or 75 basis points. And I think that the market has already priced those rate increases in. So I think in terms of whether we're at the bottom or not, I think I'm confident to say that we've probably hit a bottom in crypto unless another black swan event happens. But how long we're going to be hovering between where we're at and, kind of near the bottom, how long winter's going to last, I'm not sure. But I think we've had the coldest days of winter. The first thing is I've learned that you shouldn't listen to Mike Novogratz on CNBC because every time he's been wrong. The second thing that I want to say is that in a bear market, the market doesn't respond to good news. And we know very much that we're currently in a bear market, and the market doesn't respond to good news. It's not responding to good news. We thought that the BlackRock news would move the market, and it didn't. It didn't at all. But I do think that it is the biggest news of the year, because if you read the announcements, they made 2 announcements in the span of a week. The first announcement was that they partnered up with Coinbase, and the partnership wasn't that BlackRock was going to start buying Bitcoin. What they said is that they were going to make it available on their Aladdin system. And the Aladdin system is a system that goes across investment houses in the United States and allows them to make investments at the, let's just say, at the touch of a button. And that now makes access to not only BlackRock, but their entire base to be able to buy and store crypto in a very safe way with Coinbase. The second thing that they announced was that they're starting a Bitcoin trust, which gives exposure to their clients specifically around Bitcoin. And I think that what we'll see now is when the sentiment turns and people start to buy Bitcoin again, the buying power is going to be much bigger. So BlackRock is one of them. The market didn't celebrate that. The 2 announcements. The second announcement actually comes from another chart. And sorry, I'm very much a data person, so I like to look at the chart. Here's the chart, and the chart is that a day ago we hit 1 billion active addresses on Bitcoin, which doesn't mean that we have 1 billion people using Bitcoin. But it does mean that there are 1 billion addresses, which is, I mean, if it shows, if you look at this chart, it shows that the growth of usage of Bitcoin is exponential. Now, I want to show you one more chart here, which also makes for interesting viewing. And that is addresses. Let me just quickly get the right chart here. This is addresses of people that hold a very small amount of Bitcoin. So 0.1 Bitcoin, right now, $2,390 worth of Bitcoin. Now, what you can see in this chart is that, first of all, the chart is growing exponentially, but you're seeing 2 very interesting things. The last time the chart deviated from the trend was in 2017 and 2018, when retail got into crypto because they thought they were going to make a fortune. The market then collapsed and retail got flushed out, and we still carried on growing exponentially. Now, the exponential is very encouraging because it shows that the adoption of this technology is happening exponentially. But now we're seeing another phenomenon, which is a very interesting phenomenon. We're seeing the price going down, but we're seeing people with less than 0.1 Bitcoin increase at a much faster rate, which shows you that what we're going through now is we're going through hyper adoption. So it's not people who are buying this because they want to get rich quick, which is what happened in 2017 and 2018. It's people who are actually hyper adopting Bitcoin for what it's meant to do. And I think that's another thing that we haven't celebrated. 1 billion Bitcoin addresses. At this rate, we'll probably get to 1 billion users by 2024, 2025. And that makes us, huge. So yes, I know we're focusing on a very short time frame between now and September, but we should probably celebrate the bigger metrics first. And that is that we've hit 1 billion addresses, and we're on track for probably 1 billion people using this technology in the next 2 to 3 years. I'm not going to make a price prediction, but suffice to say that I think that Steve's being very conservative in his approach, and I think he's trying to protect himself. I think one thing that we need to pay attention to, you asked why the Bitcoin price is not moving. And I think that there's an elephant in the room that no one's talking about, and that is the 140,000 Bitcoin, which are part of the Mt. Gox hack. And I mean, just to give the viewers a little bit of a background, there was an exchange very early on in Bitcoin's life that got hacked, and they managed to recover a certain amount of Bitcoin. And today there are 140,000 Bitcoin in an account, which are going to be distributed starting from this week, actually, mid-August sometime. The liquidator, the estate, the trustee, has given an indication that they're going to start releasing the Bitcoin back to the people with the claims against the trust. Now, that's an overhang of about 140,000 Bitcoin. So with 130,000 Bitcoin, take that at today's prices, that's $5 billion worth of Bitcoin that needs to come into the market somewhere around there. You've got an upward trajectory because markets are recovering in Bitcoin, and crypto was oversold after the liquidations. Then specifically on Ethereum, you've got the merge, which is like a rocket ship underneath Ethereum powering it up. So Ethereum was down at $980 and now is trading at 100% higher than that, $1,900.